Director Kale,
Here.
Director Espinoza,
Present.
Director Lewis. I'm sorry, Director Lewis.
Here.
Thank you. Director Hoag,
Here.
Director McDaniel,
He's online. You have to, he's coming on board right now.
Director Nagy,
Here.
Director Pereira,
Present.
Director Pedroza,
Here.
Director Serrato, Director Silvera,
Aye, or here, sorry.
Director McDaniel.
I'm here.
Thank you, and we do have a quorum.
Mr. Chair, if I could just say quickly, we are, the county staff here is helping with a PDF of just the agenda pages next door, and we'll be emailing them to those of you participating virtually. So you should have received a text message from me for the first page of the agenda. If you don't have it, okay, and then you'll be getting via email just the PDF of the pages.
Yeah, no, I got
To
it.
my Gmail.
And then, okay, so we'll do the invocation. Do we have somebody to do the invocation?
Yes.
Okay.
If you'll bow your heads. Thank you, Lord, for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to meet and for our leaders to come together to discuss regional and community issues. We just ask for a special blessing on this meeting and to get the information to those who need it, and so that we can conduct the meeting accordingly. And we thank you, Lord, for this day and our freedom to be here. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen.
Then I'm going to ask Deborah to lead us in the pledge, please.
Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Lloyd put up a flag for us for him and I to look at. So I appreciate that very much.
I
Okay.
saw the one in the background.
We'll go ahead and move on. Right now, approval of agenda. Is there any questions?
Move to approve the agenda as stated.
Second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Let's call the roll.
Director Aguilar,
Present. Yes,
Director Kale,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes,
Director Hoag,
Yes.
Director McDaniel,
Aye.
Director Nagy,
Aye.
Director Pereira,
Aye.
Director Pedroza,
Yes.
Director Silvera.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. At this time, we will public comment. The public comment is available in advance of or during the meeting. If there's anybody from the public that wishes to speak on any items, please line up or speak now, I guess. Is there anybody on Zoom that wants to speak? Joy?
There are no hands raised, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on. At this time, we're going to recognize the outgoing directors, Director Aguilar and Director Faria. And I'll go ahead and pass this over to Stacy.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Pedroza. Director Faria was not able to join us today, as I just confirmed that is true, that he is not here. But I would like to take a moment to recognize Director Aguilar, as this is your last board meeting. I know that I've had the pleasure of getting to know Director Aguilar over the years that he's been serving on this board, and has been a great champion for not just the city of Livingston, but for our region, and for MCAG and all of our staff. So on behalf of the governing board and MCAG staff, we want to present you with this clock and say thank you very much for being supportive, and we hope that you stay engaged in all the work that we do in the years to come. We can take a picture. There you go. I think you can have the battery.
Thank you very much for that. And, I have a colleague that always tells me if I'm wearing a coat, then it must be serious. So, congratulations and thank you for your service to MCAG. I really appreciate it.
Could I say a few words, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so, it's a little bittersweet that it's my last meeting here at the MCAG board meeting. I've had the pleasure, to work with not only my colleagues, elected officials, but also with the MCAG staff. So it's been a pleasure. I know we've done a lot of work together. I commend everybody that serves their community. So I'm going to miss it. I am going to still remain engaged in the community, but thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you for your service. Anybody else? All right. Well, enjoy not having to come to these meetings every third Thursday of the month. So I think you'll be happy about that. All right, moving on. Let's do Citizens Advisory Committee report, and that's Paul.
We don't see Paul in the audience or online, Mr. Chair.
Do we have anybody to provide a report or no?
I don't see a member of the CAC. The CAC highlights are located in the governing board members' packets. We're happy to answer any questions as staff if any board members have any.
Does anybody have any questions to the report? Okay, we'll go on to the Caltrans report.
And I will promote Marlon right now. Just one moment.
All right, thank you, Joy. Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair, pleasure, and board members. Thank you for the time. I'll just give a brief Caltrans update for the board today, and happy to take any questions after. I'll start. Definitely also want to acknowledge the departing MCAG board members. We really appreciate the partnership on behalf of Caltrans District 10 for everything that you guys provide to Caltrans. So thank you for everything that you do, supporting the community, the county, and also Caltrans as well. I do want to start off with some funding opportunities. I'm sure I probably mentioned these before, but I do want to reiterate some of these. Starting with the Clean California Local Grant Program. We did have 2 workshops previously last month, and due to popular demand, we are holding a 3rd workshop, and this will be on the 13th of December, Tuesday, the 13th of December, from 1 p.m. or 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. And we are still planning to have a call for projects in January of 2023. And once again, this is a $100 million cycle of the Clean California Grant Program. So this is a very good opportunity for local agencies, regional and local agencies, to submit their call for their applications. And if you have any sort of questions, comments, any technical feedback that you'd like, I think we're happy to provide that. And just a little note here as well, I know, excuse me, Supervisor Silvera, I know you did mention that there was some misunderstanding regarding the eligibility of previous awardees, and I would like to clarify that previous awardees are indeed still eligible for the current round, the cycle 2 of the Clean California grant program. So I did clarify that directly with our Caltrans headquarters. I just want to let you know that as well. Moving on, we have our Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program as well. I did mention this at last board meeting, but there is $50 million available in augmentation funds specifically for adaptation planning. And again, just like the Clean California local grant program, this Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program, as we do every year, this will be a call in January for our new call for projects. The last funding opportunity I wanted to mention also was the Reconnecting Communities program. And we do have our workshop coming up, and this is the week after Thanksgiving on the 28th. And this will be from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. And just like the other two programs, we are holding our call for applications in January of 2023. Once again, all of this information is on the Caltrans website, and I'm happy to share that with the board if you'd like any further detail on that. I also would like to mention our awareness campaign that we're doing this month, particularly this week, I should say. This week is Crash Responder Safety Week. And this is important for us because we're partnering with California Highway Patrol and also our California Office of Traffic Safety. We're banding together to promote Crash Responder Safety Week because nearly every week throughout the country, a first responder is killed while helping clear a roadway crash or many other sustaining life-altering injuries. And not everyone knows that we have move over laws in California, and 25% roughly of people surveyed were unaware that there is a move over law in their state. And this is a national survey, actually. So what we're asking is for folks to move over for crash responders and slow down when you're approaching crash scenes. It's very important to maximize safety of our first responders. And so with that, I also want to leave you with the fact that we're going to be putting this on our social media and also our changeable message signs all across the state. So you'll see that as you're driving about. We do have some traffic advisories in the area that we are expecting on Route 99. And please be aware, if you see cones out there, please also slow for the cone zone. That concludes my comments for today. I will lastly mention also, I do believe there were some action items from last month that we did follow up on, but if you'd like further detail on that, please let me know. We're happy to follow up on that. But that does conclude my comments for today. I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you again for the time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I do want to comment really quickly. I really appreciate the notices and the signs that are up on 99, especially by Childs and stuff, that are telling people, you know, the width of the lane and just to know like what's going on and the traffic advisories and stuff like that. So I appreciate that very much. So thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, there are 3 hands raised by directors.
Okay. Let's go with Mr. Espinoza, or Director Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Marlon, well, first of all, I want to thank you and Caltrans for the very engaged community meeting we had where all your staff came down to Planada, and it was about a 3-hour long meeting. I know they had to wait for the first part, and eventually they gave the comments. They took a lot of questions, answered a lot of questions. I want to thank you. I guess, you know, the committee wasn't very happy with the roundabout situation, but I think after they heard all the comments and the positive, education that they received regarding the safety of the roundabouts, I think they were able to be convinced, and finally, not that they accepted, but, I know they were pushing for signalization, but I think they see that it's probably in, Planada's best, choice to probably go with the roundabout. That's what I got from the meeting. I don't know that, maybe I'm overstepping my bounds of what the committee wants, but I think that's what I saw, that they were very acceptable with all the information that was provided by Caltrans. So also I expressed to them about the need for the crossing Jayhawk system there on 140 in Sutter, and they said they were going to give me an update on it, and also the one in Highway 33 on District 5 currently. I brought that up. The one on is it Henry Miller, Scott, and Highway 33? Yes. Yeah, I know the community's been asking Supervisor Silvera and myself about that crossing there too, which is, only year after year it's getting worse and unsafe for the pedestrian crossing there to the mobile home park there. So I know that, Starbucks and McDonald's are very popular with passersby as well as the community. So hopefully we can get something resolved there. I know that it's probably the busiest crossing in, for pedestrians there in our county. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Silvera, Director Silvera.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Marlon, again, thank you for that update on the Clean Parks grant. I know that there was some, when our staff was on the webinar, that they got mixed messages, and I want to thank Dennis as well, because I reached out to him and made him aware of it, and thank you guys for your prompt response back, letting us know that there was just maybe a little bit of a misstep on how they spoke. So just wanted to thank you again.
Thank you, Director Lewis. I believe your hand was raised as well.
Director, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry. Two meetings that are going to be held: California Clean California Local Grant Program on December 13th between 1 and 2:30. But where is it going to be held?
Oh yes, it'll be virtual.
Okay, it's virtual.
Yeah.
Okay, and then also the Reconnecting Community on November the 28th. That's virtual as well.
Correct.
Okay, and will there be information sent out to the director so we'll know how to connect? I'm sure there will be.
I will definitely make sure all the directors are aware of these meetings, and I'll provide the meeting link as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Anybody else?
I would like to just say, Marlon, thank you so much for letting somebody know about that little pothole there on 152 and Palm, because it's all filled and I'm very happy. So thank you very much.
Okay. Anybody else? Is there any other hands raised from the public?
There are not.
Okay, so thank you, Marlon. I appreciate it. We'll go ahead and move on to the information items. Does anybody have any questions in regards to the information items? Okay. We will move on. To the consent calendar. All consent calendar items listed below may be acted upon with one vote unless specifically removed for separate consideration by a member of the board, a member of staff, or a member of the public. What is the will of the board?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
We'll go ahead and call the roll, please.
Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Director Kale,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Hoag,
Yes.
Director McDaniel,
Aye.
Director Nagy,
Aye.
Director Pereira,
Aye.
Director Pedroso,
Yes.
Director Silvera.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Alright, we will move on to,
Excuse me, Mr. Vice Chair, the text message we got said that the remainder of the agenda would be sent, the page will be sent via email, and I haven't received anything.
Well, we will double check on that right now.
okay. We'll go, I'm sorry?
I was talking to myself. Everything's broken. The internet here is broken. The county's website's down. I can't load anything.
Yeah, I think that, yeah. So,
The agenda is getting sent to Director Lewis right now. Is it a thumbs up? It has been sent.
yeah, I got an agenda, but I didn't get the pages with it.
The agenda packet is too large to be emailed as a document, so we have it on the website, and it sounds like it's a,
I can't even get onto the MCAG website.
yes, it's a Civic Plus issue, the web hosting, and I would suspect that might be why the county's website might be having issues if they're also hosted by Civic Plus. So we're not able to pull the full agenda packet electronically.
Okay.
As far as voting, if anyone is uncomfortable voting on an item, I believe the agenda was available prior to today. I believe the problems with the website started today. It was made publicly available as required. It was made available to each of you. So if there is an item that you're not comfortable voting on, please abstain from that item.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I know it's difficult with us being out of town and stuff, but it is what it is. Okay, we'll move on to action items. Though action items will be considered separately by the board, public comment will be available during each item. So we have to do the public hearing for the 6th cycle regional housing needs allocation. So I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, if I could, we have Alex with Cascadia Partners online that would like to make a brief presentation for the benefit of the public before we solicit comments during the public hearing process.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Alex, you're up. It looks like you're calling from the moon.
Oh, the moon is very clean and white. Okay. Will I be sharing my screen then?
If you would like.
All right. Just a moment then. All right. Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Alex Steinberger. I'm a principal with Cascadia Partners, and we were the consultant helping MCAG staff with the RENA process, which I'm happy to report is very near its conclusion. Hopefully you all can see my screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little bit of an update on the project, and I believe the action today that we are requesting is for you all to consider a resolution to adopt the Regional Housing Needs Plan. So just a bit of a refresher, we started this process back in December of 2021 when MCAG received a regional determination of need. That's the amount of housing that jurisdictions in the region need to plan for over the next 8 years. And we worked in really close collaboration with a steering committee comprised of members of these jurisdictions, as well as some at-large members representing different interest groups within the county. And in collaboration with them, we developed a RENA methodology. That methodology was documented in a proposed methodology memorandum, and we opened that up for public comment for a period of time. Received a couple of comments, addressed them, and then this body, the governing board, adopted the draft RENA methodology the last time that we met. And that was just after the Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD, approved the methodology, certifying that it furthered all 5 of the critical RENA objectives that it needs to further based on housing element law. And so since that time, we've taken the now adopted methodology that you all unanimously adopted in our last meeting where I was present, and wrote it up in a plan. So that plan provides more detail on how we arrived at the methodology, and provides guidance to all the jurisdictions as they develop their housing elements. A little bit more detail about where we are. You can see we are at the very end of our project schedule in the last quarter of 2022. We've had numerous public hearings. We've developed the draft plan. That plan has been out for jurisdictional review. And now we are coming to you with the result of that jurisdictional review to hopefully adopt that plan. How did we get from the methodology to the plan? Just as a reminder, back in July, the draft RENA methodology was published. HCD certified that methodology on September 14th, and then you all, this body, adopted that methodology on the 15th. Shortly thereafter, we released the draft RENA plan, which takes that methodology and explains it for the public and elected leaders. And during the last 45 days, from the 16th to October 31st, we open that up for jurisdictional appeals. There's a narrow set of instances where jurisdictions can file appeals, and that was made very clear, and we met with all of the jurisdictions to let them know that that was the case. And I'm happy to say that no appeals were received during that period of time. And so the runway is clear, so to speak, for us to adopt this and allow the jurisdictions in your region to start using the targets in the RENA plan to do their housing elements. As a reminder, I presented this last time, but just to remind you what methodology is, it is basically a set of planning targets for each jurisdiction that define how much housing they need to zone for in their housing elements at different income levels. And it was unanimously recommended by the RENA Steering Committee, comprised of jurisdictional representatives and at-large representatives. And it was certified by HCD, who found that it meets all of the requirements of housing element law and that it furthers all 5 RENA objectives. And at a more core and important level, it is a methodology that tries to put housing in places with where there's less potential loss of farmland, more access to jobs, more access to transit. The RENA plan as I mentioned, just went through that 45-day appeals period. It has been available in draft form through MCAG's website, though possibly not right now because the website is having some problems, but it has been available. And the purpose of the RENA is to provide jurisdictions with a clear summary of housing need at various income levels that will need to be planned for in the region's housing elements, documents the process by which we arrived at the preferred methodology, public engagement and stakeholder engagement within developing that methodology. It shows how each of the 5 RENA objectives are furthered and provides detailed instructions on how the calculations were made to arrive at the methodology. During the jurisdictional appeals process, we provided jurisdictions with a set of steps that they would need to take in order to file an appeal. But as I mentioned before, there's really kind of a narrow set of criteria that need to be true if a jurisdiction is to appeal the methodology. 1, MCAG would have had to fail to consider local planning factors, which they did consider through a survey that was released early this year. Or if MCAG had failed to allocate jurisdictions' housing need based on the RENA methodology that we all adopted last month, which there's been no deviation from that, so that's not the case. And then the third potential reason for an appeal would have been if jurisdictions had received significant or experienced significant change, like through an earthquake or wildfire or flood. None of that took place since we last spoke with jurisdictions, so not much there to be concerned about, and as a result, no appeals were received. So next steps, we're hoping that today you will approve a resolution to adopt this plan, and we can then turn around and send that plan to HCD for final approval, which is much less stringent than the approval of the methodology. They're just looking to make sure it has all the necessary components in it. Should be pretty straightforward. And then once they certify the plan, then jurisdictions can go ahead and use the numbers in the plan to develop their housing elements. And those need to be adopted by January 31st, 2024. And then we can put this out of our minds for 8.5 years and come back and do it again. But that is the end of my overview presentation. It's been a real pleasure working with all of the staff at MCAG, the jurisdictions, the stakeholders from all of your homeless service organizations and advocacy groups, and the public. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And yeah, that's the end of my presentation.
Okay. Does anybody have any, does anybody have any questions?
I see no hands raised, Mr. Chair, online.
Okay. Then I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. And if there's no one there to comment, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. What is the will of the board?
Move to approve.
Oh, Mr. Chair, if I can invite, the item A was a public hearing that we just opened and closed. Thank you very much. If we could move to item B, that Natalia Austin will present with the resolution and the request to approve the RENA.
Oopsie.
I'm sorry, Natalia and Mr. Vice Chair, with your permission, I'd just like to state officially for the record and for purposes of the minutes that the MCAG, Transit JPA, and Regional Waste agendas were posted on Thursday, more than 120 hours prior to this meeting. They were available to the public and to any interested parties as of that day. The current technological issues that we're experiencing are not affecting the public's ability to attend this meeting in person or via Zoom. Thank you.
Okay. Did you catch all that, Alex? All right. Okay, so we'll go to B.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. We just heard the presentation from Alex from Cascadia Partners, and as you heard, we are in the final stages of the RENA process. And so since he gave that presentation, I won't belabor it much more. I'll just do a very, very brief recap just to reiterate that in September, we received approval from the Department of Housing and Community Development that the methodology that we have furthered the 5 RENA objectives. Once we received that approval, we did release the draft plan for a 45-day public comment period that ended on October 31st. During that time, the jurisdictions did have the opportunity to appeal the proposed allocations, but we did not receive any appeals at that time. And so seeing that today during the public hearing, there were no substantial comments, in fact, no comments at all, we are asking for the plan to be considered for adoption. And if we do adopt today, then this will put us on target to have the final approval from HCD in time for the jurisdictions to begin work on their housing elements. So if there aren't any questions, I would really like to request that the board adopt resolution number 2022-11-17-02, approving the 6th cycle regional housing needs allocation, or the RENA plan.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Move to approve. Do I have to say it all?
No.
Okay.
So I have a motion by, is that Director Hoag?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Okay, and that was Aguilar?
Yes.
Okay. I'll call for the roll, please.
Director Aguilar?
Yes.
Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Espinoza?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director Hoag?
Yes.
Director McDaniel?
Aye.
Director Nagy?
Aye.
Director Pereira?
Aye.
Director Pedroso?
Yes.
Director Silvera?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, let's go to item C, please. Approve contract revisions required for First Amendment to the 2022 Regional Transportation Plan and 2023 Federal Transportation Improvement Program.
Thank you.
Who's reporting on this?
That's me, Elizabeth, here at the mic. I was going to say good afternoon, board. On Zoom, you all see the back of my head, but this is me. So thanks for having me. So this first item here is regarding contract revisions, but really kind of the background for this is that staff is going to be starting on the first amendments to our 2022 RTP and 2023 FTIP. We did approve them in August, and they are under review by the state and the feds. In the meantime, we've been working with our member agencies and also with the rail authorities on some changes that we would like to see already in the RTP. In general, I say that's a good thing. There's projects to add and changes to make, and things are moving forward, so we already need to start on Amendment 1. In order to start that amendment, we need to do an addendum to our environmental impact report, and we will also need to rerun or reanalyze our air quality emissions when we do this amendment. So in preparation for getting the projects ready, this amendment, we expect or hope that it'll be out in January for review. You'll be hearing more about it in the next couple of months, but to really kick it off, we do request additional funds from our consultants to perform these tasks. It's already within their scopes of work. Our environmental impact report was prepared by VRPA, and so we'll be requesting the board to add funds to do the addendum to that EIR. Also, our air quality conformity services are procured with Trinity Consultants, and we'll be asking them to also rerun conformity for our First Amendment. So hopefully that kind of covers what we're asking for in this item, and I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, are there any questions? Okay, is there any hands raised, Joy?
There are not.
Okay, then what is the will of the board?
Move to approve, Kale.
Silvera, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Please call for the roll.
Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Director Kale,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Hoag,
Yes.
Director McDaniel,
Aye.
Director Nagy,
Aye.
Director Pereira,
Aye.
Director Pedroso,
Yes.
Director Silvera.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Moving right along, let's go to item D, authorize the executive director to enter into 5-year contracts for federal lobbying services in the amount of $270,000 and for state lobbying services in the amount of $150,000. I believe this is Mary Michael
Yes.
presenting.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, and I'll do what Elizabeth did and say thank you and hello to all of you on Zoom as well. Good afternoon, Mary Michael Rawling, Public Affairs Manager for MCAG. The item before you today is a 3-part action to approve 2 contracts, one for federal and one for state lobbying services, as well as to approve an increase to member dues to support these agreements starting in the next fiscal year. As you likely remember, staff came before the board in June of this year with a recommendation to expand the agency's lobbying services to include state-level advocacy work, with the understanding that this expansion of scope, as well as the re-procurement of a federal lobbying contract after the conclusion of a 5-year agreement, would almost certainly necessitate an increase to member dues, as this is the only funding type the agency has that can support this work. The board unanimously concurred with proceeding with the recommendation, and staff released an RFP in late August. In mid-September, we received 3 great proposals, one for state-level lobbying and 2 that included both federal and state services. After receiving all of the proposals, staff paused the procurement process and brought a range of potential dues increases back to the board last month, just to make sure we were all still on board with proceeding. After receiving positive feedback from this body, staff was able to successfully negotiate down agreements with the evaluation committee's top proposers, which are Townsend Public Affairs for federal services in the amount of $270,000 and Politico Group for state-level services in the amount of $150,000. Both agreements consist of a 3-year base agreement with 2 one-year options that may be exercised upon satisfactory performance of the lobbyist. These $2 figures represent the total cost over the full 5 years. In order to accommodate the execution of these agreements, an increase in member dues of $67,400 annually is required starting in the next fiscal year. As a reminder, even though these contracts would begin in January, MCAG has enough carryover from One Voice savings in the last couple of years due to the pandemic and lack of travel to pay for these agreements through the remainder of the current fiscal year. A schedule with the breakdown of the annual dues increase by jurisdiction can be found on page 400 of your packet. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So we're gonna go, you'd like to go with Townsend for federal and Politico? Did I misunderstand you when I said you had 2 that were gonna do both?
No. So
Okay,
when we open the RFP, I can see how that can be confusing. So let me clarify. When we open the RFP, we left it flexible so that someone could propose to do just state level services, just federal level services, or both. So we had 2 of the 3 proposals included services for both state and federal. But when we evaluated them as a committee, we took we compared apples to apples. So we took the state level services that were proposed in all three agreements, compared them against each other. And then for the two that proposed federal level services, we compared those two against each other. Does that make sense? Am I answering your question?
Yeah, kind of. So if we like Townsend's proposal for federal, why didn't we like them for state?
I'd like to say that we had three very qualified state proposals. I think the biggest difference is that we were looking, they're different approaches. So for the federal program, it is a very broad program that we all are familiar with One Voice. So it's organizing the One Voice trip. It's a whole host of issues that we would be covering. On the state side, we budgeted and anticipated a much smaller program that was really about honing in on our priorities for the agency and doing advocacy work in Sacramento, limited primarily to transportation and transit issues. So it's not a One Voice program. It's really about, think of it as almost an extension of staff to really kind of be on the ground in Sacramento, attending the CTC meetings, doing the kind of legwork that we aren't equipped to do ourselves. So we were really looking for two different types of work, and the committee recommendation came that determined that through the point criteria that Politico came in just above Townsend, looking at those particular work tasks. So it's a different type of a program.
So how much were they less than Townsend?
So the original proposed price for state services had them as standalone services equal. I'm looking at my thing very quickly here. Mary Michael, correct me if I'm wrong. On page 399 is what we're looking at, right? So the cumulative was the same. We did, after issuing a notice of intent to negotiate, which we do with the lead proposal, we're able to reduce that cost from Politico in half. So it's a hard question to answer because we only negotiate with one. At evaluation, their independent costs were equal, and then once we went into negotiations, that was reduced in half.
So this will increase. I'm looking just in Atwater for $8,000 a year, roughly 7 something. Okay.
Correct.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Lewis, or Director Lewis, I'm sorry. You're on mute.
Quick question. The annual cost of $67,400. I wasn't sure what that was for. Is that for each jurisdiction, or is that for the remainder of the year?
No, that is an annual increase that's split amongst all the jurisdictions. So you can see that split and that schedule, and on page 400 of your packet, it's also included as a separate attachment on the item. So the increase for the city of Los Banos would go from just under $20,000 to just over $30,000. So approximately $10,100 per year.
So you're saying, excuse me, Los Banos would be 10,000 or just over 30,000?
It is increasing by just over 10,000 to a total of $30,040 per year starting July 1st.
Okay, then I'm confused if the annual increase is $67,400.
That was an aggregate total.
Okay.
From 132,000 aggregate total member dues per year, which is what we collect now, to 199,600.
Okay. Well, hopefully if the website comes up, I'll be able to take a look at that.
Yeah, our apologies. That is not an MCAG issue, and we are not the only agency experiencing difficulties right now.
I did, though, if I could, Mr. Vice Chairman, get confirmation that I believe Nav Bagri was able to get the PDF reduced and emailed out. No? I'm seeing some yes, I'm seeing some yeses and some nos.
And I believe also Christina Mraz,
Not the full agenda, just the first couple pages. I got that, but I didn't get the full agenda.
Same here.
I believe Christina Mraz has also separately emailed a link to everyone where you can download the packet. I see a nod from Director Espinoza.
At some point, probably this evening, when we're all asleep, our phones are going to blow up with all the emails that you're getting from our staff trying to get this agenda packet to you guys. Okay. So I'm sorry. The one thing I did want to mention, Director Lewis, is right now, collectively, all of the jurisdictions together pay a total of $132,200 in annual member dues to MCAG. Under these contracts, that amount collectively would go from $132,200 to $199,600. So collectively, that is an increase of that $67,000. So then that increase is shared among all the jurisdictions. So Las Banas' share is just about a $10,000 increase. So of that $67,000, Las Banas' share would be about $10,000.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I have a couple questions. Who was on the committee?
There were members of staff.
So
Organizations. There were representatives internally from members of MCAG staff. All jurisdictions were invited to participate with a representative, and the County of Merced elected to send a representative to participate in that evaluation.
So there were no directors that were a part of it?
Correct.
Mr. Vice Chair, if I may, directors are typically not members of evaluation committees for these types of contracts. And the reason for that is for your protection legally, because you are the ones who make the final decision on this action. The committee makes a recommendation to you and you take final action.
Yeah, okay. I guess my question is, I don't understand how the scoring is so, okay, so for Townsend, Townsend scored really high federally, and I understand that there's criteria that you guys are looking at, but then they scored 2 or 3 points less than Politico for state. And so it's kind of confusing on why we wouldn't at least consider them for both. I'm confused on that.
Director Pedroso or Vice Chairman Pedroso, they were evaluated separately. So, for example, we asked them to propose. So you have to look at them as two separate proposals, because Politico did not have a federal proposal. So we weren't necessarily. We were looking at them independently for different services. So when we were looking at the proposals we received for state, the federal proposal was not taken into account because we procured it in a way that was clear that it could result in two separate contracts. So there, I think it's difficult to try to combine them when it's not apples and apples, because we opened it up to have singular proposals for only state services. So for example, Politico only does state services. They only propose for state services. It happened that Townsend proposed for both because they offer both services, and then K&L Gates provided for federal but brought a sub on for state. So it was really important to separate them and have apples to apples, looking at all the state proposals independently and evaluating them independently, and then looking at the federal proposals and evaluating those independently of the state services. Does that make sense?
And they were separate scopes.
Yeah.
Yes, there was a scope for state services and a scope for federal services.
Yeah, no, I get that part. I just don't understand why if Townsend was so high up and you have to separate the two, why would we have two different firms? That doesn't make sense, but.
And it's just because Politico scored higher collectively with the group evaluation committee.
For the state.
Correct.
Okay. Director McDaniel. You're on mute.
There you go. Thank you. I was trying to take my hand down since I raised it. No, I think it's real important that we do look at it this way. I like the staff recommendation. We need to have somebody in Sacramento there's just a lot of money coming across. And if we don't go after it, we're not going to get it. And I think that the two recommendations for the state and then for the federal are both good recommendations. They do good work in both places. And if I need to make a motion for that, motion's on the floor. That's with Politico for state and Townsend for federal.
Thank you. Director Silvera.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So I guess I get it. I do understand the fact that we are looking for two separate services. We bid it out as two separate services. For me, and I don't know the folks at Politico because I've never met anybody from their organization as far as I know. But where I'm having my struggle with it is when I go look at their website and I look at their client list, they tend to be, most of the people they're representing are unions. They're representing, I mean, the Finishing Contractors Association of Southern California, United Contractors, Vote Hemp Building Industry Credit Association. I don't see any, and I do know, I was made aware, did a little bit of homework, I was made aware that I believe that they represent another, they represent TCAG, but I don't see that on their website. I don't know of any other, I'm gonna call it more like government institutions that they represent as much as they represent more industry type folks. Can I get some explanation on that?
Can we ask, Kiana's on, can you promote her?
Mm-hmm.
Vice Chair Pedroso, I'm not sure if you heard, but I've asked our staff if Kiana Valentine with Politico is on, and we're promoting her to be able to address Director Silvera's questions or concerns. We can't hear you, Kiana. It is the day of all days for technical
Boy, no kidding.
issues. Well, I'm glad that it's like all at once instead of just pervasive every meeting, you know, not just get it all the frustrations at once.
And just for the record, Rodrigo had to get off, so he is not on the call anymore.
And while Kiana is getting her audio fixed, to Director Silvera's point, Politico is under contract with TCAG, Tulare County Association of Governments, and also in a joint contract with TCAG and Madera and MCAG for the Finish the 99 Coalition, which is where our policy council and our Director McDaniel, who also serves as the representative on the Finish the 99, has had the opportunity to work with Politico. Kiana, any luck? No. There we go. Okay.
So sorry, my Wi-Fi has been giving me problems today as well. And so I was on both the computer and the telephone. So apologies and thank you for your patience. Good afternoon, directors. And Director Silvera, to answer your question, we do represent a number of public agencies. It is true, our firm does specialize in general construction with a focus on union contractor organizations because we are an infrastructure firm. It is the issues that we specialize in. I joined the firm just shy of 4 years ago. Prior to my joining the firm, I spent almost 15 years in service at the California State Association of Counties working on local government issues. And so when I joined the firm, we did start to expand the breadth of the clients that we serve. And I guess I am just embarrassed to admit we have not updated our website recently enough. And so that is the honest answer about it. I'm happy to go through the list of clients that we do represent in the public space. It ranges from the urban counties of California, an association of the largest counties in the state. We also assist the Rural Counties Association on specific issues at times when our infrastructure and particularly transportation, transit, housing, land use expertise is required. We are in service to the Tulare County Association of Governments. I believe I heard Stacy mention that, and have had the pleasure of working with Merced and Madera in addition to Tulare County on the Finish the 99 campaign over the last year and a half. My colleague who would also be in service to MCAG through this contract if awarded and selected to represent you, Chris Lee. He joined the firm a few months ago. He is working with a number of those similar clients and recently was awarded a contract with the Sacramento Area Council of Government. So there's a smattering of local and regional government in addition to the list of union contractor type associations and organizations.
Perfect. Well, I would encourage you to update that website because you listed quite a few of them. And as you know, this is a new contract for us, and I don't take it lightly that like all of my colleagues that sit on this board we're also saying that we need the advocacy service, but we're also saying that it's gonna cost us more money. And then so this is kind of my first time that I get to interact with you. And you know, before, I mean, because it's a multi-part thing here. We're saying we want to bring on a state firm, and it's going to cost us more money. So I want to make sure that we're making good decisions. So I appreciate you giving me that update.
Anybody else? No, and I would agree with you, Scott, in the sense that we're asking people to make more money, but if we really don't know who this organization is, but we've all worked with Townsend before, and we know Townsend, and we can speak to them. So I don't understand why we wouldn't just have one. I understand that we want, you know, the presence in Sacramento, but I think having one would make more sense than splitting it up, because, you know, we know the product and we know what we're getting when we talk to them. So that's what I would just recommend Townsend.
Director, Vice Chairman Pedroso, that I just need to clarify that per our policy, that if that were to be the direction of the board, we would have to go back out to bid for the service and reevaluate those proposals because we bid them out as separate. We bid them out on separate contracts, and our evaluation committee and the criteria in our policy resulted in the recommendation ahead are in front of the board. Wouldn't necessarily affect the federal, I don't know, but because we bid them out to be two separate contracts, potentially two separate contracts with two separate scopes, and this process has resulted, the agency process has been that when the board has not, the question is, the question of the board today, and I'm going to look to the council, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but we've had situations where the board has questioned the vendor selected through the procurement process, and for the integrity of the procurement process, when the board's question has come to them, it has been, do you approve the contract as presented to you or not? It's a yes, no, and not a who. And if the question of who arises, then the procurement process is completed again to keep the decision and the process clean. That has been how we've done it up to this point. Whether or not that's how we have to do it, I don't know, but I just wanted to clarify that. And I'd look to legal counsel if I've misspoken.
Yeah, I would like to ask legal.
This item is being presented to you in two parts and with different amounts for each contract. These prices were negotiated with each of the vendors separately for that specific service. If you, at the absolute minimum, you would have to go back and renegotiate the price of this contract. But the executive director is correct. We have not had a situation where it is a yes/no question whether to award the contract or not. It's not typically a board reevaluation of the process. This is essentially the board substituting its judgment for that of the evaluation committee, which it's welcome to do. However, not that it's welcome to do. It's going to, it's hard to explain in this situation. You are essentially asking staff to award the contract to Townsend for both federal and state services. The contract has not been negotiated with Townsend for both of those services. The evaluation committee evaluated state and federal services separately. They did not evaluate them together. Politico scored higher on that state evaluation than Townsend did, based on the scope of work for state services, which was a separate scope of work to that of federal services. If you want one contract, the scope of work will have to be revised to include both of those services, and it would have to be released again, and people would have to bid again. This process would essentially come back to this board in several months after we go through all of that process a second time.
But if they already submitted a bid, I don't understand.
I would also like to caution this board that, I'm sorry, I'm in an uncomfortable situation here. This evaluation committee scored Politico 2 points higher than they did Townsend. If you then choose to disregard that scoring, and not award the contract to Politico, there is the possibility of legal action on the part of Politico in response to that. I just want to make you all aware of that.
Okay, thank you. Director Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. My question is, in past history, has MCAG ever had a dual contract with one agency, or has it always been the RFP sent out to have two different agencies or companies bid on a contract?
This is the first year we've gone out for state level services. So in the past, we've had one agency-wide service for federal lobbying services. However, as Stacy has mentioned, we have participated in partnerships with other COGs where we have retained the services of a joint lobbyist with, and so we have partial contact and support from those lobbyists through those collective agreements that are not under MCAG, but that we participate with our peer agencies. This is the first time this agency has undergone this particular process with having our very own dedicated to us state level lobbying services separate from federal.
And just out of curiosity, with Townsend, was there satisfaction with the end result of their negotiations for lobbying in times past?
I can't speak to times
past. We have only had Townsend under federal contract and have been they have been very successful with their services to us on the federal contract, both in negotiating a cost that was acceptable for the agency and also in the services provided. But as Mary Michael mentioned, this is our first for the state to have a state contract. I did, to your original question, just want to note that it is not uncommon for COGs and actually even some of the jurisdictions within the county to have different lobbying firms for state services versus federal services. It's not uncommon because of the contacts and networks that are utilized. And some firms, such as Townsend, do offer both, but it isn't uncommon to have two separate ones for the different services.
I'm not questioning whether it's common or not. I think, where I'm trying to get to is, in past history, did MCAG, whether it was collective contract with other COGs, use Townsend singly for state and federal negotiation? And if,
No.
Apparently there must have been some satisfaction that we would enter into a contract that way with other COGs. And with that being said, and hearing that there was satisfaction, would it have cost MCAG less to have one contract rather than two out there? You know, and I don't know if that was in the thinking of staff to even consider that. So that's the end of my questioning. So I guess I would like an answer on that.
I'm sorry, Director Lewis. I think I'm struggling to answer only because we've never negotiated a state contract with anyone, town center or anyone.
Even in the collective, as I understand it, the MCAG did collective contract with other COGs.
Correct. Yes.
When that happened, was there ever one agency that negotiated both federally and
Not so on the not that I'm aware of. Right now, the Valley collectively is under contract with a state firm and then a federal firm separately. So not to my knowledge. I can't speak that it's never happened, but just not in my experience.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay, Director Silvera.
Thank you, Chair, or Vice Chair. Stacy or Mary Michael, was it the same people that were the team that we put together to review? Was it the same ones on the state contract as the federal contract?
Yes. Yes, it was the same committee.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I think there's questions in the room, Mr. Chair.
Yes, there is. There's a motion by McDaniel, but there's no second.
I'll second that motion.
We do have Director Nagy raising his hand.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second.
Okay, thank you.
The roll, please.
I think Director Nagy has.
I'll have comments.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The question I have is, since these were two separate entities, could we approve the federal one today? I know what you're saying about possible litigation and so forth. That's just just a question. And then my other question would be, it's not a question, but we're wanting a company to represent us at the state level that doesn't. We want them to work for us and put our best interest forward, but they don't even update their own website. That causes me to pause and think, just that.
Yeah, I can respond in to the first question. These are two separate contracts. So they can be acted upon separately. I don't know if it's appropriate, but I will also say that in terms of this particular firm, and again, I don't say this to the discredit to the other firms that are proposed, because I think we've been clear from the start that we had excellent proposals across the board on both levels. I have worked with Politico. I know Director McDaniel has worked with Politico. Some of our existing staff, both from TCAG and here, have worked with them and feel that they're an excellent candidate to represent the region and the work that we're doing. Very much ingrained in the discussions, transportation issues and discussions in Sacramento, and in fact have really gone above and beyond in serving the agency beyond what we're compensating them for as part of our Finish the 99 campaign. So I have no reservation, not again to discredit anything that Townsend or the K&L Gates partnership would have brought to the table. But to the extent it is worth this conversation, would have no doubt that for where the agency is in establishing a state program, we're really in an infancy. We don't have a large bench of projects that are going to be out there competing for state grants that we need to be fighting for tooth and nail. We aren't proposing a one voice program yet. We're really talking about, for example, step one, doing education with our board and our public works and planning staff about this new environment in Sacramento with CAPTI and these new regulations and how do we develop projects that are going to be competitive. It's helping us craft messaging and even deliver some of that messaging at a CTC hearing, or, you know, when they're at networking events and shaking the hands and meeting folks in Sacramento, they're doing so with our projects and our issues on mind. You know, we're not going to be a real sophisticated agency right out the gate when it comes to how we're engaging with Sacramento. I really think it's a help us figure out, how do we get there? How do we message ourselves? How do we lean on the partnerships that we have with other associations? And I think the work that they're doing with TCAG is really great synergy for us, because we work very closely with TCAG with the #1 priority of finishing the 99 and other infrastructure issues. So yes, we can. The board may, and I would encourage that if there is any doubt that if there is no question on the federal contract, move forward with the federal contract. But I do encourage the board to consider the staff support and the recommendation of the committee with Politico and the agencies work with them to date on being able to serve the needs and help us get our footing. The other is that we are asking for the authorization for 5 years. The board could authorize 3 and make an extension of that contract mandatory of a board action, as opposed to giving me the authority to execute those extension options for year 3 and 4. There are other things that we can do if it would assist in this decision-making process. So I'm sorry, I got on my soapbox there for a minute, but hope that helped.
And from a legal perspective, yes, you can award the federal contract today and the state contract at a different time. However, I do want to point out that that would likely or could bring the question of member dues increases back to you again, because the prices of these contracts, the increase in member dues was suggested based on the price of these contracts. And if you'll notice, the price of the Politico contract is less than half of the cost proposed by anyone else.
Yeah, I do. So you're projecting that they're going to provide us education and training and what's going on for $150,000.
That was a very, very simple example. It was more of to demonstrate that we're at an infancy of developing a state platform and a state presence. And I think right out the gate is the first thing is understanding the Sacramento environment that has changed drastically around transportation with the CAPTI policies. That was just kind of an out the gate situation. You know, beyond that, I mean, there's a whole host, and we have the scope of work that is included in that. I just use that as an example that, you know, to Director Nagy's point about, you know, maybe being able to represent us when their website is not updated. I really think that we first need to collectively work through what do we want to have represented, and I think an education process has to start. That's just like Q1 of this new calendar year kind of activity. I used it as an example. But thank you for asking that, because I wouldn't want to suggest otherwise.
Okay, I see another hand. Chris Townsend.
I have allowed Christopher Townsend to speak.
Christopher, I think you should be able to unmute yourself. There you go.
I just want to add thank you very much for your consideration, and of course, we'd be honored to serve you guys in any capacity. Just want to make sure folks were aware, because they've only seen us work on the federal stuff, but we do state stuff. We've done it for 25 years. We're in the top 10 ranked firms in California, reported to the Secretary of State. And that includes our work with 5 other transit agencies, because I know transit's important to you. So I just want to make sure you had the advantage of knowing that we can do that stuff, but I'm also not trying to do anything that violates the rules of the RP. So I want to make that clear. But I just wanted to speak to that, because I don't think that was I don't know if that was basically understood by the folks there.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Deborah.
Yes, hearing the representative from Townsend, I think that's who just spoke. And I'm hoping that the committee and staff, when they were doing the evaluation for the RFP, sought out that information, hearing, what we're hearing now, that they have extensive background in doing negotiations or reaching out at the state level for other COGs and hearing their rating. So I'm just throwing that out there. I think probably it shouldn't have just been, political and Townsend, but maybe, looking at both of them and also having them submit a dual RFP for state and federal.
Director Lewis, that's actually exactly what happened.
Their idea of what they would have been able to offer MCAG collectively as a package, and what it would have cost us. Would it have cost us less money to have one agency rather than two? And I think that's, kind of my big point there. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Director Lewis, just in response to that, that's actually exactly what happened. They did submit a proposal with to both services and were interviewed for both.
Okay, so we have a motion. Anybody else? We have a motion. Scott?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I know we have a motion on the floor. I would be more comfortable with doing the 3-year contract. They're new to us. We're going to be new to them. I get that there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the front end, just getting to know each other. I know that we have relationships with Politico a little bit with other things that we're involved in, but I like the 3-year that Stacy mentioned, and I'm not just reauthorizing the extra 2 years. I'd like to see that come back so we can do a reevaluation and make sure that we're getting what we wanted, and so I would hope that the maker of the motion would consider that.
Director,
I'm good with that.
I'm sorry?
Yes, I'm good with that.
Okay.
I'm okay with that as well.
Pat, you made the second, correct?
No.
It was Aguilar, but I'm okay with that as well.
Okay. Is there a second?
Yes.
Yes.
What was one? Okay. So we'll go ahead and call for the roll.
Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Director Kale,
No.
Director Espinoza, I'm sorry, he's not here. Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Hoag,
Yes.
Director McDaniel,
Aye.
Director Nagy,
Aye.
Director Pereira,
Aye.
Director Pedroso,
Yes.
Director Silvera.
Aye.
Thank you, motion carries.
Okay. Because my computer is dying a slow death, let's try and get through these next ones quickly. We're on E, approve a preferred formula for the distribution of $1,234,325 in local transportation funds. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair and Board. This item is regarding some LTF funds that are available for the member agencies. This item came to the board last month based on an item in September. So not to backtrack too far, but these funds came available as part of a COVID relief package under CRISA. So we have this additional $1.234 million in LTF funds. Typically what's been done with LTF distributions in the past is a formula-based allocation. What was recommended at the board last month is that the board consider a formula-based allocation that would take a portion of the LTF funds and distribute it as a base to each of the agencies, and then take the remaining portion of the LTF funds and split them by population. What you'll see in your agenda, for those who can see the agenda, and hopefully you saw it before, on page 430, if anyone has that, there are a couple of different scenarios. I'm happy to kind of summarize the numbers if anyone has questions on that. There are some different scenarios shown where we could, as the board, distribute the LTF 100% by population, as has been done in the past. There's an option with a 5% base, 10% base, 15% base, and 25% base. So for example, with the 25% base, a little bit over 300,000 of the funding would be equally distributed to the 7 agencies, and then the remaining 75% allocated by distribution. So generally, that tends to provide a little bit more funding for our small agencies to work with at this point. Before I kind of wrap up on the presentation, I want to mention that this was presented to the Technical Review Board, and their recommendation was to not distribute at this time and to hold the discussion on the distribution of these funds to go along with a future directed board discussion that I think that this board has had about LTF reserves in general. So it has come to this board before. You know, each year there's a little bit LTF left, right, after we pay for rail and transit and things like that. And this discussion has come up regarding what to do with the leftover LTF. There's been discussion about a reserve and how to manage the reserve. That is still something that this board, you know, should be discussing in the next few months. So the TRB did recommend, hey, maybe we wait. Maybe the governing board waits and holds on to this funding until the reserve discussion occurs. So I just want to let you know that that was a recommendation from the TRB, but in the staff report here, it's open for board's direction on how to distribute the 1.234 million that's available. It is available now. If you decide not to distribute it now, it'll just be sitting in the account. So there's not necessarily a rush on our end on that. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions? All right, what is the will of the board? Don't all jump at once.
I want to move to approve and distribute.
Lloyd, I'll second.
Which option? I like option 25D, but that's just me. D, I want D. I want all the money.
I agree with that.
Motion and a second. We'll call for the roll.
We had a motion from Director Hoag and a second from Director Aguilar for option D. There is
In D, it's page 430 for those who could see that.
yeah.
Base 25. Sorry, I feel like I'm cutting in and out. The base 25% equal distribution to all 7, with the remaining 75% split by population.
Great, thank you. So noted. I'll call for roll now.
Sorry, Joy. I see Director Silvera has his hand up. Vice Chairman Pedroso.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to vote on this one right now, and I don't like kicking things down the road, but I did look at this stuff last week in my office. It's up on my computer. I had the agenda up, and I'm sorry that we're having this trouble, but I can't see what D is, and I know I had a preferred one that I liked, but I don't remember which letter it was, and I'm sorry for that. But and it's just, I know we had a first by Director Hoag and a second by Director Pereira. It was just to approve releasing it, but then it sounds like D got thrown in there by Director Hoag and Director Aguilar. I'm not sure. I'm a little bit confused on this one. I know the agendas were posted in time. You don't have to remind me of that again, Council. But I don't know. I don't want to vote no on something, but without better information, because I can't see it in front of me, I'm going to have to vote no on this. I just want to put that out there.
Is there a way to put them up?
Yes. Give us one moment.
If you go back one page, Mary Michael, there is the kind of typical formula solely on population on page 428, a little bit up further. So that would be kind of the typical way that it has done before, solely on population. And then there are 4 additional options that are 2 pages down. So I just wanted everyone to see those numbers there. It ends up with the smaller agencies having around 25,000 of the funding from the typical option. And then there are 4 additional pages here or tables here with different amounts. Option D at the bottom has about 308,000 split equally, about 26,000 per agency, and the rest by population. So those are the options. A, B, C, and D is just below. There we go. So happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chair, you're muted.
If anyone's on their phone, it might be hard to see. But.
Yes. Okay. So we have a motion and a second, but it seems confusing in the sense that there was a motion and a second, and then D got thrown in. So which one are we voting on?
So the motion would need to specify which of the options is included. So Director Hoag's initial motion did not identify option A through D or so she didn't specify an option, and then she later came back and specified option D, to which Director Aguilar seconded.
Okay. So we have a motion for option D and a second for option D. So we'll go ahead and call for the roll.
Director Aguilar?
Yes.
Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Abstain.
Director Hoag?
Yes.
Director McDaniel?
No.
Director Nagy?
Aye.
Director Pereira?
Well, yeah, I guess I need to abstain. I'm not sure.
Director Pedroso?
I'm going to say no.
Director Silvera?
No.
That motion did fail. At this point, there could be another motion made, or you could direct staff to bring this back at the next meeting.
Director Silvera.
Thank you for recognizing, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a motion to table this item to next month's meeting. And again, I do apologize for for the ones that are there. I can't. I know you put the numbers up. I appreciate it, but it's a little hard to make a decision right this second.
I would second that. So we have a motion by Supervisor Silvera to table this, and then I seconded the motion for the next meeting. So we'll go ahead and call for the roll.
Director Aguilar?
No.
Director Kale?
No.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director Hoag?
No.
Director McDaniel?
Yes.
Director Nagy?
Aye.
Director Pereira?
Aye.
Director Pedroso?
Yes.
Director Silvera?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I think if we don't continue it, then it just goes back to what it's always been. So we need to continue it so we can look at it next month and hopefully increase our shares. Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Go ahead and do F, approve local partnership program cycle 3 submittal. Now I have to go get my charger, so I'm gonna turn my camera off, but I'm still gonna be listening.
Okay, thank you. I'll start with item 9F. This item is a request for the board to approve the local partnership program cycle 3 project submittal. As a self-help county, MCAG, as the Transportation Authority for Measure V, is allocated some funding called local partnership program out of SB1. Any county that has a sales tax measure, impact fee, et cetera, receives a formula allocation of LPP funding. We're in the third cycle of this, and MCAG has about $1,586,000 in LPP available. Per the policy to prioritize Pioneer project, the LPP is generally assigned to the Pioneer project in Los Banos. There has been discussion at the city level, and we have met with city staff. The Pioneer project currently is fully funded through environmental. Their environmental is scheduled to be completed in August 2024. At this time, the project is not able to procure and receive these $1,586,000 in funds. There is a very tight timeline on this, which is why we had the discussion with Los Banos to see if the funds could be allocated in time. The funds must be allocated, by the California Transportation Commission by June 2023, and then under contract for a construction project by December 2023. So we're working with a relatively short deadline. For a construction project, we have to have environmental already done, right away done. We're ready to go to the CTC within the next couple of months and ready to be out to bid by the end of the next calendar year. Due to the schedule and after meeting with the city, MCAG staff reached out to the county regarding some large projects that they may have available to use these LPP funds on this short timeline. The LPP funds have a 1-to-1 match. So we're looking at a project that has a minimum of a $3.2 million budget, where half would be LPP and half would be another funding source. It can be split into multiple projects. We would strongly prefer it to be a fewer number of projects. The allocation process with the CTC is pretty complex. There's a lot that goes along with that, and we're looking at, hopefully funding 1 or 2 projects with it. Upon discussions with the county and a review of the Measure V implementation plan for the west side, there aren't a lot of $3.2 million projects that are ready, shovel ready to go within the next 6 months or so. So we did work with the county on what might be available on the west side that they could assign these LPP funds to. Because again, this is one of them, not like the LTF where we can table it. We do need to figure this out in the next couple of months, what to do with these funds. Working with staff at the county, they proposed 2 different projects that would fit the bill. They should be ready to go out to bid in these in the January to March timeframe. And the 2 projects that they submitted to us were on Ingomar Grade and Lincoln Boulevard. Similar to the last item, I would report that at the TRB meeting, they did recommend or make a request to this board that the funds be allocated to the Ingomar Grade project, about half of the 1.586 in the LPP funds, and they had requested that staff survey the other agencies to see if there are other available projects before putting the funds on the Lincoln Boulevard project. They had a recommendation there. I think one of the key things that we've been looking for is a west side measure project. There just aren't a lot of west side measure projects ready to go in this very tight time frame. Again, I just want to emphasize we have worked with the staff at City of Los Banos. They've had a discussion with their their council regarding Pioneer. We've been very supportive. There's been a number of funds that have gone to Pioneer, and they are fully funded and cannot accept more funds in this time frame. So that is where kind of this somewhat last minute, we have 6 months left, Pioneer project can't take these funds, we have to put them on something that's ready to go. So what we have in front of you is a recommendation to program it to 2 different projects in the county, and on behalf of the TRB, I would mention that they requested that only one be programmed, and that we do kind of not a formal call for projects, but kind of ask, canvass the other agencies for available other projects, prioritizing a West Side project. So happy to take any questions. I know that maybe wasn't the most eloquent explanation, but happy to take any questions.
Director Silvera.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Yeah, I appreciate the staff's work on this. This is something I know in Las Vegas that this board is committed to, and I'm committed to helping to see the Pioneer project through. But we all understand, and I think staff in Las Vegas understands, that some of these dollars have timelines that they have to be spent by, and we're just not quite there yet. And unfortunately, fortunately for the county, and unfortunately for other folks, if you want to call it that, is that we have big enough projects that it's a pretty simple lift to be able to just plug this money that otherwise we'd be in jeopardy of losing, plugging it into a project that's actually going to get something done. So with that all being said, I would make a motion to go ahead with staff's recommendations to, I believe it was to Ingomar and Lincoln, I believe the other road was.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? I'll call roll.
Director Aguilar?
Yes.
Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
I'm going to abstain from this one.
Director Hogue?
Yes.
Director McDaniel?
Aye.
Director Nagy?
No.
Director Pereira? Director Pedroso?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, Director Pereira? Director Silvera?
Aye, for Silvera.
And Director Lewis, I'm going to change my vote to a no.
Okay.
Okay, and motion carries.
Director Silvera.
Never mind, sorry.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, Joey, what was the vote?
Motion carries.
Okay.
Just for the sake of any clarification on the minutes, did we record a vote for Director Pereira? Okay, so just for the record, we have no recorded vote for Director Pereira.
Okay. Let's go to approve the local partnership program cycle 3 project. Go ahead.
Director or Vice Chair Pedroso, we are now on item G. This is Stacy, confirm support of the California Inland Port Project. Can I proceed?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Got it. Okay, sorry.
Thank you. It's taken a village today. We're all going to get through this meeting.
Let's get going because my computer's going to die. So.
You got it. Okay. Well, I'll keep this brief as, my famous last words. The California Inland Port Project is not a new project to this body. Several years ago, actually, I think it was 2 years ago, I brought an item before the board when there was a proposal for the Valley Cogs to lead an effort to develop what's called the California Inland Port Project in concept. At that time, MCAG, this governing body, decided to not participate in in or help fund that feasibility study and some of those early development phases. In that time, over the last few years, the project has evolved into a potentially federally supported integrated goods movement system that would operate through much of Central California, and promises to provide benefits for the entire region up through the Sacramento area as well. On November 4th, the San Joaquin Valley Regional Policy Council, of which both Director McDaniel and Director Kale represent this body, unanimously supported the project and next steps to secure funding, including an application for the SB, I think it's 198 funds that from the state that are supporting the development of inland port projects. So at this time, staff is requesting the governing board to consider a position of support for the California Inland Port Project. I do think it is important to note that the Merced County's Inland Port Project that launched earlier this year is separate from this California Inland Port Project. The California Inland Port is still in its development phases, but the inland port in Merced County could be considered to be one of the major trade port locations during the selection process for the California Inland Port Project. And if there's anything I missed, I would turn to Directors Kale and or McDaniel if there's anything I missed. So at this point, we are just seeking a position of support, and then Director Tony Boren from Fresno COG could be here at the December meeting to present on the item and seek a resolution of support. Vice Chair.
I would go ahead and say that after further discussion with how the project's coming across, that I did stand in support for the regional, because I know that Castle can't handle all of it. And even though we are 8 years ahead of everybody else on the project, we will be probably competing with grant monies that will be distributed by the state, so we might as well be the regional effort as well. So with that, I would motion to support this.
And I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? We'll go ahead and call for the roll.
Director Aguilar?
Yes.
Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director Hogue?
Yes.
Director McDaniel?
Aye.
Director Nagy?
Aye.
Director Pereira? Director Pedroso?
Yes.
Director Silvera?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Let's move on to board reports. I believe that's the one we're on, right? Correct?
We are in item 10, discussion item for the multi-jurisdictional housing element.
Yep, I got it.
Got it.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. MCAG has been working over the last several months with local jurisdictions to prepare for the development of a multi-jurisdictional housing element, which we plan to kick off next January. And hopefully you've had some discussions within your jurisdictions at this point regarding this effort. I wasn't planning on going into a lot of detail on the background. However, I'm happy to answer any questions, and then there's also some detail provided in the staff report as well. Today, I'll provide a brief update on where we are in the process, but this is mostly to go over the cost-sharing agreement, which was developed in partnership with local staff. And we're planning to bring the consultant contract to you next month for approval, and we need to get a couple items lined up prior to doing that, and this cost-sharing agreement is one of those items. Just a little bit of background. So after several conversations with local staff earlier this year, it sounds like all jurisdictions are interested in participating in a 6-cycle multi-jurisdictional housing element. There's some significant benefits such as cost savings and a coordinated approach to addressing some of the state's new requirements for the housing elements. We worked with staff to develop an RFP for the multi-jurisdictional housing element. Proposals were due September 30th, and a consultant selection committee with representatives from local jurisdictions has a preferred consultant, which we will bring back to the
the governing board next month for authorization of the contract. And there's a couple important deadlines that I want to call out. December 1st, we're asking jurisdictions to provide a signed resolution confirming participation in the multi-jurisdictional housing element, as well as a commitment to your portion of the cost in accordance with the cost sharing agreement, which I'll talk about in a minute. And MCAG staff prepared materials that jurisdictions can use to take to their governing bodies to have these discussions in October and November. So I'm hoping that you've had some opportunity to be briefed on these at this point. And then December 30th is the deadline to provide MCAG a deposit to help with cash flow. Since MCAG doesn't have flexible funding that can be used for housing element updates, we're asking jurisdictions to provide a deposit up front to alleviate cash flow issues, since it is a large contract. And MCG is anticipating using its remaining REAP 1.0 funding, which is approximately $480,000 to cover approximately half of the contract, but we don't have that funding yet. We're hoping we can get it early next year. So that's another reason why we're asking for the cash flow deposit. So the cost sharing agreement is up on the screen. I don't know if we're able to zoom in a little bit. It's also on page 446 of the agenda packet. And I mentioned that we worked with local staff over the last couple months to develop this. In September, MCG presented a draft cost sharing agreement to the REAP work group that utilized a tiered approach for small, medium, and large jurisdictions to divvy up the cost of the consultant contract. But at the TRB the REAP work group and the TRB at its September 14th meeting requested that we instead utilize a similar approach to how Measure V funds are distributed, using a base and then a portion allocated pro rata. So I'll walk through the cost sharing agreement now. The consultant contract amount is that first column on the left in yellow, and it has been negotiated at $1,030,743 for all jurisdictions to participate in the update. And just a couple notes about that. So due to some significant changes in the state's requirements for housing element for the 6th cycle, the cost is significantly higher compared to the 5th cycle. For the 5th cycle housing elements, I've heard average costs around $50,000, but for the 6th cycle across the state, it's could be upwards of $200,000. So this countywide contract does include some cost savings for jurisdictions. And then there's also certain portions of the housing element that have economies of scale if we coordinate them at the regional level, and that includes things like outreach, background report, and a needs assessment. So going at it as a group, I think makes a lot of sense. And then the second yellow column is the REAP 1 contribution. So we're anticipating we can allocate $480,000 of MCAG's remaining REAP 1 funding to reduce the cost that jurisdictions are responsible by almost half. And then the consultant cost per jurisdiction is split 50-50 between a base cost of $38,000 and then a pro rata cost. And then the third on the right, the orange column, MCG admin, this cost is just split evenly amongst jurisdictions, and this is for MCAG staff to administer the consultant contract and then help with some coordination of the effort, such as our monthly meetings, check-ins, that sort of thing. And then, so the total jurisdiction contribution in blue, that's the amount your jurisdictions would be responsible for over approximately the next 18 months. I think the schedule has us wrapping this effort up in the summer of 2024. And then the cash flow deposit is the far right column in green. That's 20% of the total jurisdiction's contribution. And again, we're asking for that deposit to help with cash flow until we receive the REAP 1 funds, and just to help, because MCG doesn't have funding that we can use for that housing element update. And this item doesn't require action from you today. We really just wanted to make sure that you got a chance to review this, because we want to tee up the contract approval for next month. This project has a tight timeline, so we just wanted to get this in front of you now if you had any questions, and thank you so much.
What happens when the jurisdictions don't have the money to pay their contribution?
I'll answer this if you, okay. So this is not a function that MCAG typically serves. We're not involved with housing elements. This is a requirement of your jurisdiction. The hope is that since jurisdictions knew that they would have to do the housing element update after the completion of RENA, that they would have budgeted funds for this. This is an activity required by the cities. So by MCAG, the jurisdictions at the staff level did make the request for MCAG to do this as a one region approach for the sake of some cost efficiencies, and then your staff doesn't have to also administer the contract and do the work and everything. So that's a long way of saying the only way MCAG will be able to, and you'll hear this from us next month, is to execute the contract to do a multi-jurisdictional housing element is if each of your jurisdictions have confirmed and committed to your cost share, because MCAG is not funded to do any of this work. So it is, the options would be that cities go and the county go on their own and do your own, which you'd fund on your own, or we would be doing it collectively this way. So I don't know what it would mean, but it would be required to be able to complete this product through MCAG because we aren't funding it. That's why we're also requesting the $35,000 to cover the staff time and other things, because our funds aren't allowed to be used for it.
Director Pedroso is no longer on the line.
I'm going to take the liberty of guessing that his phone, his laptop died. He did communicate that he was having some issues. So Director Hogue, would you mind? And I do see that Director Lewis has a question.
Okay, Director Lewis.
Thank you. So Stacy, for jurisdictions that may not have the funds to do this, can we collectively still move forward for the jurisdictions that want to do a joint agreement and let them go on their own?
I would say yes, that was an option a few months ago, but we have procured, I'm looking at Meg because I don't really know that I'm completely sure, but at this point, I don't want to speak for your staff, Director Lewis, but I know that the City of Los Banos staff has been very actively involved in this, and one of the early questions was, have your jurisdictions budgeted?
To Los Banos, because I'm here in Dos Palos,
yeah.
They don't have the money, so
I didn't say that, I just asked the question.
Okay.
Is that if any jurisdiction doesn't have enough money to collectively be in this bargaining process, can they go on their own and the rest of the jurisdictions still move forward with MCAG to procure a collective bargaining for the housing element?
I believe we would have to renegotiate the contract. It hasn't been executed, but we would renegotiate the contract with the preferred consultant.
At this point, each jurisdiction that's on this contract has agreed to date that they would participate.
At the staff level, yes, and over the last, I think starting last month until next month, the request has been for jurisdictional staff to be bringing this before your council. So if that has not yet happened, it should be this month, if not like any day. So yes, it's only been at the staff level at this point.
Yeah, our council has, heard this process. We heard it last night, but I just wanted to, hear from MCAG if there is any one particular jurisdiction within, the MCAG that if they can't afford to pay right now, can we still move forward with this contract, or would you guys have to go back and renegotiate? And that's what I'm hearing from the attorney, Emily Hayden, is that it would have to go back to negotiation again.
That was staff, actually.
Yeah, I did not speak on this item, but I believe there was only one proposal received on this particular, for this particular procurement. It would have to go back and be renegotiated if one jurisdiction did not want to participate, but as I believe staff has mentioned, this has been a long process. Your jurisdictions have been very active in that process, and I believe all of them are aware of their legal obligation to complete a housing element and would prefer to spend the money to have MCAG procure this consultant and administer the contract rather than use other staff time and other funds on it.
Yes, and again, I understand that. I'm just, I just heard, what happens if we can't afford to pay our share. So that led to my question. If we're looking at moving forward and each city has brought this to their council and they've agreed to it, how does that affect us, if a jurisdiction can't afford to move forward at this particular time? So that's the only point that I'm trying to make is how does that work with the way this contract is set up right now?
If I may, Meg, I believe we'll have an answer to that before this board takes action on this item next month.
Yes, so jurisdictions have until December 1st to provide us a signed resolution confirming participation, and that will be required before we bring this back to you on December 15th.
Okay, thank you. That answers the question.
Director Nege.
Thank you. I'd just like to point out that that this is something the cities have to do regardless, and our city did send our resolution in already. I'd like to point out that this is the most cost effective. If you try to do this on your own, you're going to spend a lot more money than what this scenario is calling for. And I'm glad it's just for discussion, because I would want to bring it back at the next meeting, because we have lost several of the supervisors and they don't have the numbers in front of them, so they probably wouldn't be be cautious about voting on it today. So thank you.
And just for clarification, I don't believe that this body is going to be taking action on the cost sharing agreement. It's being taken on a resolution at the local level. Okay. And next month we'll come back with the contract. Okay.
Okay. Are there any other questions? All right, then we're moving on. Here we go. Thank you very much. I don't know what happened to Josh, but we're moving on. So we're going to item number 11 is an action item, and there's nothing there. So now we're moving on to Merced County Regional Waste Management Authority, action number 13. So we have A, authorize the executive director to enter into a 5 on-call master agreement for landfill engineering services for a total of 3 years with 3 one-year extension options with all of the listed below, I should say. And this is Patrick. So welcome, Patrick.
Thank you. So today I'll just provide a brief history and quick recap of the RFQ process. On-call services enable RWA to meet regulatory timelines and reduce the amount of time necessary to complete projects. We're not new to master agreements. A similar RFQ was released in 2016, and at that time, 4 consulting firms were selected. The master agreements with those firms expire at the end of January, and so due to that, in July, we released an RFQ for landfill engineering services. As with the previous on-call RFQ, 4 task groups were identified: landfill engineering services, geohydrological engineering services, landfill gas engineering services, and landfill gas collection system and O&M and reporting services. We received 9 proposals from the current RFQ. The evaluation committee consisted of 2 RWA employees and 1 outside evaluator. Evaluators scored based on qualifications of the project team, experience with similar projects, references in past performance, the resume of the project, and the resume of the project engineer. Interviews were held with top scoring proposers for each task group. The consensus from the evaluation committee was to recommend 5 firms for on-call services. Rates were then provided by the recommended firms and were deemed to be reasonable. As far as fiscal impact goes, strictly speaking, there's no cost associated with a master agreement. Master agreements only identify the type of work a consultant is qualified to perform. On-call and project-specific work is captured in work orders. That said, any on-call services provided under these master agreements would not exceed the annual budget approved by the board. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions for Patrick? Oh, I knew it. Okay, Director Silvera.
Thank you for recognizing that I was going to have a comment. So Patrick, if you're the guy that's in charge of these contracts, you just better make sure that just because they have on-call contracts, that doesn't mean that they don't, it means that they have to still deliver stuff on time and not putting us on the back burner. If we're going to go through this exercise of letting them have an on-call contract, they need to actually deliver on what they propose that they're going to deliver us. And that's not directed at any one of these firms, but it's been my past experience that firms they have these on-call contracts and they don't deliver. So,
Yeah,
comment. Thank you.
Yeah, staff agreed with that, and therefore we have multiple firms per task group. So should one firm not hold up its end of the bargain, we can go to another.
Are there any other questions? Because we need to open it up for public comment. Do you have any public comment? There are no public comments, so we need to have a motion. Oh. Okay, and now I see that Josh is back on too, so yay.
Yeah, I've had all types of hotel key issues, and it's, yeah, so, my bad. So, we have a motion, is there a second?
Director Nagy seconded.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and call for the roll.
Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Director Kale,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Hogue,
Yes.
Director McDaniel,
Aye.
Director Nagy,
Aye.
Director Pereira, Director Pedroso,
Yes.
Director Silvera.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we're on we're NAV, it looks like you're up, right? So 13B, correct?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, directors. This is going to be a doozy, so hunker down. Before you is a two action item, which one is a budget amendment for this CIP for the Billy Wright entrance, and the second one is an amendment to the contract with Taylor Backhoe. At Billy Wright, the entrance project progressed. Staff's identified several opportunities for additional improvements to the scope of the project that would be more cost efficient to include it in the current construction project rather than addressing the future. The scope changes are the cost of concrete paving, an additional 2 inches of concrete with rebar and 4 inches of cushioned aggregate underneath the cement. So what item we're talking about is basically right here and right here. Whoop, let me jump again. Right here is basically to make our scale house and our scales more sturdier. And that cost is about $54,000. The second item is we had during the permit process, environmental health recommended that we add another 50 linear feet to our leachate pond. It goes from 50 to 100. So eventually, we all know when they recommend, they're going to enforce it later down the road. So we might as well do this now. So the cost is about $6,200. The second item is when they're doing currently they're adding asphalt right here. What it does is this area is not currently asphalt. So what it does is it doesn't on this area the stability of the asphalt will deteriorate and will not give enough stability. So what we're proposing is to asphalt all this to give this more stability, along with just finish off the whole area and make it more efficient. That costs us about $61,000. And then we have this called a tipping pad where they have the recyclables and organics collection for the west side. This tarp right here only has 2 ventilations. And as we know, on the west side, the winds could really pick up. And so what's happening is this tarp isn't very sturdy, and eventually it's gonna deteriorate and rip. So what we're proposing is to purchase a new tarp with more ventilations to make it more efficient and more sturdier. That costs us about $20,000. And then just additional cost to rerouting the copper wire to make it more efficient and more sturdier with, how we added this more concrete and crushed aggregate. That's about $13,000. And then the mobilization of equipment through bypass lanes and a removal with makes sure the site will be more efficient. That costs about $10,000. So the total cost is $170,000 to the current contract to Taylor Backhoe. And then also adding money to construction management, about $25,000. And then adding camera surveillance to the facility. Currently, there's no cameras there. And then server grades. With that in total is at $230,000, which is the budget amendment, which will come out of our unencumbered amount that we have right now in our CIP. So, any questions? Mr. Nagy? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it.
Oh, I see Director Silvera. Pat, did you have a question? Director Nagy?
No.
No, sir.
Okay. Director Silvera.
Now, just a quick numbers question. It's 2 actions, but so it's increasing it by a budget amendment for $230,000.
Correct. It's for that project. So that 230 includes 170 for the contract.
No, I got that part, but then it's only 170,000 difference on Taylor Backhoe, and is that included in the 230?
Correct.
So that's why you only need the 170 for them.
Yes, correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, if there's no further questions, motion to approve items A and B, or excuse me, B 1 and 2.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Who made the second?
Nagy.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Director Kale,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Hogue,
Yes.
Director McDaniel,
Aye.
Director Nagy,
Aye.
Director Pedroso,
Yes.
Director Silvera.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we have no discussion items, so we'll move to the director's report. Stacy?
Thank you, Vice Chair Pedroso. Just a few things quickly. I want to just remind you all, and you'll get a formal invitation soon, that on December 15th, which is the governing board meeting, we will have a ribbon cutting and open house at the new TJPA administration building, which is right next door to MCAG. And if you're in town and in the neighborhood, we have the building signage up, and it's looking really nice. So that will be at 1:30 on the 15th. And then we are scheduled for the quarterly homelessness and housing workshop at the board on the same day at 2:30, and then our regular meeting starts at 3 o'clock. And other than that, I will wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving.
Who took the over-under on the amount of time that Stacy was going to speak?
I could feel it in the room.
Definitely filled under, the under.
Thank you for that. And
I would always take the over on me.
oh, trust me, I know. Congratulations on that. I know that's been in the works for a long time, and it's good to see it getting done. All right. So we have director's reports. Go ahead and start with Pat.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Nothing to report except happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Well, I want to say, Ron, been a pleasure knowing you and working with you. Good luck in whatever you do in the future. Same to Mr. Faria also. And other than that, that's it. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you, John. April.
All right. Well, thank you for your service, Director Aguilar. I appreciate it. I just have a few things. I like our picture in the MCAG. I look sort of thin, so thank you for that. We actually finally got, it looks like, our first bus stop. Thank you for getting that bus stop. It's beautiful Bronco blue, so I'm very happy with that. And we are going to have our ribbon cutting at our first completed Measure V regional project. It's going to be on November 30th at 11:30, and it's at our Scout Hut, which is right across the street from the coffee saloon. So I will see you there. I guess I'm taking my day off on Wednesday the 30th. And other than that, thank you for your roaring discussion today, and that I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving. We will have our Christmas parade on December, I think it's the Thursday after Thanksgiving, but anyway, but thank you and have a happy Thanksgiving. Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Done.
Juan.
Once again, thank you. I'm going to miss you guys. Thank you for everything, and happy Thanksgiving.
Okay, we'll go to Director Lewis.
Well, I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and Director Aguilar, I haven't had a chance to work with you much, but congratulations on your time here with the board, and I wish you the best in your endeavors as you move forward. And for the rest of the board and Stacy, just to let you know, Los Banos approved their housing element last night for the collective bargaining, so you should be hearing from our staff soon, if you haven't already heard from them. And that's it. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Director Silvera.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Yeah, Juan, it's been a pleasure. We really do. I really enjoyed my time working with you. I know that we don't always agree on everything, but I always felt that we could have constructive conversations. Mayor Nagy, congratulations on your reelection. And I'm not going to thank Director Faria for his time here because he quit my city, and I'm very frustrated with that still. But anyhow, have a happy Thanksgiving, and I will talk to you all soon.
Director McDaniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Vice Chair. Juan, you're definitely going to be missed. It's been a pleasure serving with you. You've done a great job. Director Nagy, congratulations on your win, and happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Okay, I think that's Emily, did you have anything?
No.
Thank God. No, thank you again, Juan. Like I said earlier, I really appreciate your service and what you have done and worked for, and best of luck in the future. And congratulations, Pat, on your victory for mayor. And I really appreciate working with all of you. And during this time, you have to be thankful for a lot of things, and I'm thankful to be able to work with you guys. So happy Thanksgiving, and everybody have a great Thanksgiving holiday. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting.